specifically non-medical, right? There is no way that it should be medical. If it is remotely medical, it will be rejected. So please keep that in mind. We will have the first one today, and the aim is to have one every month. We'll try and get some of the faculty also to come and present. We've had very good ones over here in the past, and it's our endeavor to have similar things over the next approximately 12 months at least, and keep a sort of track of these things, right? So welcome to Curiosity Talk, and it's great to have Sagnik kick off the thing with his presentation on regimental insignia. So over to Sagnik.
Thank you so much, sir. A very good evening, sirs, and a very good evening to the audience as well. So, before we kick off regimental insignia, I just want to have an idea from you guys, from the cadets particularly. Can any one of you tell me what is a regiment? We hear these things a lot. Any one of you, can any of you volunteer what is a regiment? Okay, didn't expect that. Anyway, so we'll move on, and I'll hope that answer changes. Okay, so the ORBAT, anyone, what is the ORBAT? ORBAT is order of battle. When you are like defining a battle or telling about a battle, so the units which are there, it's called an ORBAT, such as, try to make a unit one out of this. So we have basically 5 parts out of this talk. The first thing is I'm going to explain to you what basically is a regiment. We keep on hearing these things, but they are not exactly how we know them to be, right? Second is, we only think of infantry when it comes to regiments. So unfortunately, due to an error in my system, most of the infantry part has not been saved, but I am sure that we will cover a lot before we reach there. So part 2 is regiments and some combat support arms. 3 is what are these formation signs and regimental signs? How do we differentiate them? 4th is my favorite, which is the presidential bodyguard, which is a lot of fascinating history, especially if you are interested in horses. And the last is special forces, no introduction needed. Okay, so we'll kick it off. Okay, so first thing, for a lot of the officers this might be basic, so sir, I apologize. For the cadets, so NCC mein ye suna hoga, nobody paid attention to it, we just wrote about it. So there are 3 things. One is the fighting arms, infantry, mechanized infantry, armored corps. It's said corps, it's not said corps. Then there's support arms, where we have artillery, army aviation, corps of engineers, and services, where we fall, right? So we will not cover the services part today. We'll cover what regiment means in the fighting arms, as well as some of the support arms which are not very well known. So we'll go to the infantry part in a while. So what are these regiments, right? So to define regiment can have 2 connotations when we are talking about infantry. One is it's a family of battalions, right? It's a group of soldiers, around 600 to 800, which are called a battalion. It's a family of battalions, which a particular sort of tradition, with a particular sort of recruitment. So that is like a esprit de corps, which is built through this regimental system. How did it come to being? That we'll look at it. Now, a very common mistake that people make. People always use regiment and battalion synonymously. You must have heard the term RMO. What is RMO? Right. But it's actually a person who's posted to a battalion, right? But we use them synonymously. So things can get a bit confusing when you go into it. Now this is for infantry. Second is for the single unit regiments, right? Which are not infantry. These are basically single units, around 600 to 800, which have their own structure, but we also call them regiment. So in our minds, we need to be clear about what is an infantry regiment and what are the other regiments which we'll cover. That is armored, which are tanks, arty, air defense, engineering, sappers. You must have been to CME, that is like the apex institution for engineering, and lastly signals. Okay, so this is the structure of basically an infantry structure. So at the bottom we have a section, which is the smallest component, 10 men. Then there is platoon. 3 sections form a platoon. After that there's a company and there's a battalion, right? This is the battalion where you all, those who are going to join, are going to be posted in, right? So that is the RMO, or the battalion medical officer. That should be the more correct word, right? Now this is for only infantry, this is not for armor, So this is just to give you those terms that we're using freely. Battalion, regiment. This is the battalion. So collection of battalions, say Sikh regiment, say Punjab regiment. So they are a collection of battalions with that wide umbrella that is called a regiment in the infantry sense. Okay, so I have told you this. Now interestingly, each regiment has a regimental center. This is this permanent place where they keep hold of your recruitment, training, pay system, record of service and soldiers. I know this is a lot of theory, may sound boring, but we'll have the pictures part a bit later, but we need to have the basics clear here. So each regiment has a colonel commandant or a colonel of the regiment. He is the senior most officer of that particular regiment, which is as an honorific we given that title, right? So he's usually a lieutenant general. We know lieutenant general is a 3-star rank, right? So he's the one who is the nodal authority on all the regimental traditions and how to go about it. Now each regimental center will keep track of all the recruits that are happening from that regiment until he reaches brigadier, after which it becomes general cadre, which we call as general cadre. So for other ranks, for NCOs, even for officers below brigadier. This is scheduled to change with the introduction of the Artillery scheme, something which we have heard a lot about. But that is how exactly a regiment is. It's basically like a family which becomes your, basically the regimental center becomes your second home to those who are posted in infantry. Okay, right? So regiments can be defined or can be classified on the basis of classes. Now, one is the single class. Single class means that only one particular ethnicity or one particular region is being used for recruiting. For example, Garhwal Rifles, we recruit from the Garhwal area, Tehri, we have heard all those areas. Then there's Gurkhas, Sikhs. This is a single class regiment. Now, there's a lot of controversy on why this came up. People say that the British did this to divide and rule, basically. They created this theory of martial races, where certain races would be able to fight better, and the others, especially the Madrasis and the Bengalis, they were not considered very fit for service. This was a policy that came in with the British. So we'll not go into that debate, but this is a single class regiment. Fixed class is when there's a fixed proportion to it. PBG will come to it, where there are equal proportions of Jats, Sikhs and Rajputs for recruit, right? And the last one, which was a really pioneering thing when it came about, that was the Brigade of Guards, where Field Marshal K.M. Cariappa said, we will break all these barriers. New India in 1949 should have no class barriers. Anyone can be free to recruit. So this is the Brigade of Guards. And para and mechanized infantry also is all India, all class. So this is to give you a brief idea. Lot of theory there. We'll try to skip this just to bring a few interesting points to you. The first battalion which was recruited was in 1758. Same Robert Clive that we so hate. He was the guy who made the first Sepoy battalions, right? So Madras Regiment takes its history from 1758. Right? After that, then we have Punjab Regiment. Now, can anyone tell me what is the insignia of Punjab Regiment? If anyone has read our book. So I have highlighted this. They were first called Coastal Sepoys. So Punjab Regiment is the only regiment in the world for infantry to have a ship as its insignia. It's a galley. This is because they were the first ones who agreed to cross the ocean, which was something a very religious taboo. So Punjab Regiment has a beautiful Greek type galley in its insignia, right? Then there is Maratha Light Infantry, MLI. So MLI is also called the Jungi Paltan. So this interesting thing about light infantry is that they march faster, 20 beats faster than the rest. So when you go to parades, you'll see that MLI marches at 140 steps per minute, which is a faster one. Then there's GCBG or Presidential Bodyguard, which we'll come to. And so as a Bengali, one of the major doubts of this for myself was, why is there no Bengal regiment, right? So this is the reason. There were a lot of Bengal regiments, but they were the ones who rebelled in 1857. So after 1857, Brits completely culled most of the Bengal regiments. Only the Bengal Sappers that survived because of their excellent service in faith. They're faithful to the Brits. Right. So 1895 is a very important year. That was a time when presidential armies. So earlier the armies used to be divided into 3 presidencies. Bombay, you know what presidencies are, right? Bombay, Madras, Calcutta. So 1895 is the first time when they completely unified it into all India force. And there's this one guy called Kitchener that name we see, recruiting to World War I, he did a lot of great work in reforming the Indian Army. Right? So the modern regimental system traces from 1922. That is the first time Brits thought that we'll have it like this. Interestingly, the 10th battalion of each regiment, that used to be a training battalion. That could be used for people to get extra troops in for training, administrative purposes. For example, say the 10 by 7th, we see this for Gurkhas particularly. If you read accounts, they'll be written as 3 by 5, 3 by 10. So what is this basically? This is the battalion, 10th battalion of the 7th Rajput. That is the notation system. This 10th battalion eventually became the regimental center that we are familiar with. For example, Garhwal Rifles has a beautiful regimental center in Lansdowne. It's a beautiful place to visit. It's a hill station, right? So, for example, Bombay Sappers is there in Pune. Madras Sappers is there in Bangalore, and other Bengal Sappers is in Roorkee from IIT. So stuff like that. So this was the 10th battalion. They thought we'll make it into the regimental center. A small thing, but it influenced Indian Army significantly. So that is this. Right. So after 1947, there was also a distribution, like everything, of the armed forces. Right. So detailed armed forces reconstruction committee formed, and they redistributed stuff. So regiments were redistributed in a significant fashion. India received 11 of the 19 infantry regiments. Right. Interestingly, Gurkhas had a very separate structure. Can anyone tell me when were the first Gurkhas recruited? Any ballpark, 1600s, 1700s. World War I, that's a great guess, sir. They actually forced Nepali villages to give certain soldiers from there. But it actually goes to 1815, right? Has anyone been to Mussoorie? So the guy who founded Mussoorie, Frederick Young, so he was the one who basically was taken prisoner by Gurkhas while fighting, right? And he was so impressed by them while in imprisonment that he decided that इनको recruit करना ही है. So he recruited them from Saharanpur POW camp. The Gurkhas lost, and that is how the second Gurkha rifles came to be. Right. So 1815 is the time where the Gurkhas have been recruited. During 1947, when we were partitioning, so Gurkhas were given a choice. Which regiment you want to choose. So 6 regiments chose India, 4 chose Britain. Gurkhas served in the Falklands War in 1882. They cut off Argentines' head with kukris. There's a very famous photo of where kukris, Argentines were so scared by the kukris that I think a division surrendered to a battalion of Gurkhas. So that was the kind of fear that Gurkhas had, right? So yeah. So now we'll get to the less boring part where we have a lot of pictures and less theory. Okay. So this all thing I was telling you about was basically regiments in infantry, right? Giving a brief overview. Now there is also a regimental system in a significantly different manner in the combat support arms. I showed you in the first image, I think, which are the combat support arms which I'm going to talk about. So one of this is Regiment of Artillery. Now artillery is the second largest wing of the Indian Army, right? Second largest. 1827, say this has been a part of Indian Army. Again, after 1857, the Brits thought that we can't trust Indians with artillery. So in World War I only we were given a chance. Now look at this logo, right? So can you see this star? Right? It looks like a very regular star. Right? So this is called the Indian Star, right? Order of Star of India. It's a 5-pointed star. So the Star of India is there also in a very famous logo, which we were all watching very recently. It's not related to army, it's related to sports. Yes. The BCCI logo also has a Star of India, right? So this is a chivalry order which the Brits created, and they left imprints like this on throughout their colonial buildings. If you go to Rashtrapati Bhavan, they have pillars with stars hanging down from them. So any regiment they could find, they put this star on it. So a lot of regiments have this Star of India, right? And this gun that you can see, it's a 1871 vintage gun, which you can see. This is the insignia of the Royal Artillery, right? And Izzat Iqbal is something they took as the regimental motto in 1954. So when things were getting Indianized, there was a lot of controversy. Should we have, only Sanskrit names as mottos? But then the Chief of Army Staff, Rajendra Singh Ji, particularly insisted that Izzat Iqbal should be the one for the Regiment of Artillery. So you see a lot of similarities there. We'll move on. So these were the first women to be commissioned into the arty for the first time recently, very recently. So this is the shoulder epaulets that you can use to identify the arty regiment. Now you must have seen this Agnivas thing when you are coming to the Pune camp, right? So this Agnivas is actually a division of artillery. Now you can ask, what is the connection of an artillery regiment, right? So as I said, as I showcased you the first slide, that was an infantry organization. Now each arty regiment, we'll not go into detail, but they have guns, right? So they call it gun batteries. So there's a battery commander. And nowadays SATA is Service Acquisition, Surveillance and Target Acquisition Regiment, which basically takes care of our drones, so the new drones we are getting from Israel and other stuff. So one of these ladies have been commissioned into the SATA regiment. So that is RT. Okay, this is the core of Army Air Defense. Now this is the first logo which the Army designed by basically subletting it to an organization called NID, National Institute of Design. They told NID, give us a design which would suit this. Army Air Defense was a part of artillery till 1994. So can anyone tell me a very famous logo which most of us are forced to use on a routine daily basis as part of the forge, I guess? And it's one of the horrifying experiences going through their internet database with n number of OTPs coming in. Can anyone tell me what am I talking about? So for every step, they have 5 steps of OTPs to log into their interface. SBI. So the SBI logo was also designed by the same man who designed this core of Army Air Defense. That was also from NID, right? So what is this air defense logo looks like? So this is a missile. So they have considered their missile systems very holy. So whenever a missile system passes through the quarter guard is the ceremonial guard that every unit is supposed to have. So they salute that gun. So there's a general salute that happens for the gun. So it's very holy to them. And Akasha Shatrun Jahi is a Sanskrit term which means basically kill the enemy on the air. So what is the job of an air defense? Is to take out the enemy on the air, right? So all these S-400, you must have heard, is a famous Russian air defense system that we bought in. So all of this goes to Army Air Defense, right? In 65 war, how many of you been to Amritsar? Do you know Amritsar was napalmed by Pakistani Air Force looking for one particular signals unit, one particular Army Air Defense unit saved Amritsar. Pakistanis attacked Amritsar airfield 29 times to try to look for that particular radar, but these guys somehow saved that radar, and that is one of the secrets of why India succeeded in taking out 15 Pakistani Air Force jets in 65 war. So it was that important, 29 times. So these are the unsung heroes, AAD, that you'll see from their shoulder epaulets. Right? This is AAD, which is Army Air Defense, right? Next is something closer home, which is engineering corps, right? Can anyone tell me what is this the insignia of? CME. Good observation. This is actually CME. Somehow the engineering corps is obsessed with this fort. Can anyone tell me what this fort is? If anybody has been to Delhi. This is a Purani Killa, right? So engineering corps has somehow a fascination for Purani Killa that is also seen in the CME insignia, right? So for these ones, as I told you before, RT, air defense, so individual regiments do not have insignias in them, just that wider that organization has this insignia. So for example, engineering corps, all over the place they will use this insignia and they'll write XYZ regiment, right? So say 35th Engineering Regiment, but there's no specific insignia individually which is there for most infantry regiments, right? So which is why I'm showing you one particular insignia. Now Madras Sappers is the oldest one, and that's why I've written since 1780. That's how old it is, right? BRO and MES particularly as mess secretary is the most frustrating organization for me. No offense taken, but MES also comes under the engineering corps, right? BRO, can anyone tell me what BRO is? Border Organization. So the ex-commandant of CME who came to Jigyasa to give prizes, he is the current head of BRO. So engineering corps people only help BRO, right? But I've written this a small technical thing, ERE, extra regimental employment, where you go out from the lines of a regiment and, for example, if you're volunteering for other organization, say NSG or something like that, and then you come back. Similar for PRO at higher ranks. Okay. Now, an interesting trivia. So, can you see this memorial? This is in Roorkee. As I said, the Bombay Engineering Group or the Bombay Sappers have the regimental center in Roorkee. So, can anyone tell me? This is a very strange shape to have a memorial, right? Why are they, showcasing this particular minar? Have you seen a memorial which is shaped like this? Pretty strange shape, right? It's not a mosque. It has no religious purpose. It's just a memorial. So the story goes, this is actually the minar of Ghazni. We have heard of Mahmud of Ghazni, the famous massacrer, the same Ghazni. Now, Indian soldiers were actually fighting in Ghazni in 1839, the first Anglo-Afghan war. And this is considered to be one of their greatest achievements, the Sapper units, which is the siege of Ghazni. So, Sapper, this word we keep on hearing, Bombay Sappers, Bengal Sappers. What is the etymology of this Sapper? Why are they called Sappers? Because the role of these guys was to dig in trenches in these forts. So, in the early days, you see this fort, there is a kind of moat around it, There's a kind of water body surrounding it so that people cannot go in. So what these guys should do, they used to dig trenches below it and to basically to go below this walls and to destroy it with explosives. So these sappers used to dig trenches in a zigzag fashion and reach there. So particularly two Indian sappers did this in 1839, and that's how Ghazni was won. Ghazni was considered an unconquerable fortress back then. And England won the first Anglo-Afghan war, ending in disastrous fashion, and they had to go back many years later, which is why Afghanistan is called the graveyard of empires. Anyways, but this is the...
But why sapper? What sapper and digging?
They sap into the soil in a zigzag fashion and they implant explosives. This actually was done far before 19th century, as far as back as the siege of Constantinople in 1453. That's where also when sappers were used in a significant fashion. So if you go to the Bombay Sappers Regimental Center in Pune, they have a very interesting old pankha, right? So you see this pankha. They have a mechanical pankha where you must have seen this pankha walas used to take this. So it's one of the few places in India where you can still see the specimen of a pankha wala. Right? Okay. What is this? Any Bengali, if anyone has been to Calcutta, Fort William must certainly have come as a posting to some. What famous landmark of Calcutta is St. Paul's? This is St. Paul's Cathedral. It's the first Anglican cathedral and the largest cathedral the Brits built in India, basically, right? And this we have seen in movies. Everybody goes there and takes a photo, but nobody bothers to go inside. So that is the Asiatic Society Library Hall. Now, why I put this is both of these guys. One of them is from the Bombay Sappers, and another of them is from the Bengal Sappers, right? So these guys did a lot of civil construction as well. So a lot of famous engineers from the Bombay and Bengal Sappers are courtesy why we have such great buildings, right? Okay. Now this personally is one of my favorites, which is the core of signals. This I recently found out. This is a 16th century statue. You have to go to Florence to find this, right? So this is called the Flying Mercury. Any Mytho fans, what is Mercury the god of? Also called Hermes, right? So the famous panda which is asked in quizzes is what is this, what is this herald, this staff? Audacious. So it is not the rod of SLPS, right? That's a common mistake people make. SLPS is there in obviously the AFMC insignia. So this is a staff of Audacious, which signifies Hermes or Mercury. Now for some reason which I have not been able to find, signalers across the Commonwealth nations call this Flying Mercury as a Jimmy, right? What is a signaler known as in Commonwealth nations? Any idea? It's named after a bird. Sparrow. Yeah. So Sparrow is it's a code name of any signaler is called a Sparrow, right? There's also a famous general by the name of Major General Rajinder Singh Sparrow. So he was the GOC of 1st Armored Div in '65. He was one of the 6 to have won Mahavir Chakra twice. right? So he was also called Sparrow. Anyway, so we come back to the core of signals. You again see the 5-pointed star of India. They're obsessed with this. So even though we decolonized by replacing the crown, this is the royal signals. So we decolonized by removing the crown. We still stuck with the Order of Star of India, thinking कि ये तो किसी को पता नहीं चलेगा कि this is a British crown. So and then this is Qriosity, and this is the flying Mercury statue. And Tivra Choppers, it's a very distinctive quote which basically showcases signal strength, right? Now, what is the role of signals? Okay. Obviously, you guys must have seen this in 26th January parade, right? The famous human pyramid. They have a Guinness World Record in 2001 of being the largest human pyramid of 201 motorbike riders. Now, one might ask, why does signals have a motorbike unit? Right? Just for fun, let's have this, huge spending on a stunt biking team. Let's recruit people like that. No. So these are dispatch riders, right? Dispatch riders. So signals is actually a very comparatively young unit. It was formed in 1911, and they share a history from Sappers. Sappers used to do the work of signalers, basically transmitting messages. Now signalers do a lot of different work, like fancy terms, information warfare. They're called information warriors, right? So, anyways, but this unit was actually from dispatch riders, and it goes back to 1935. So now coming to the regimental connect. So why corps also has a signals corps also has a regiment, which usually is at the division or brigade level. Again, if you go back to the first slide which I showed, if you have clicked the photo, I'll show you back again. So at that level, there's a signals regiment, right? So signals also have regiments. That was the point of this. Okay. You see the blue and white color, right? Blue and white color. This is the international color of signalers. Across the Commonwealth nations, you will find